What's good, family? It's your boy Tiny Cross-H.U.G, Hope, Unity, Growth. Straight from the streets of LA to your screen. If you came for transformation and a little bit of turn up, you in the right place. Now lean in, lock in, because I got one question for the whole squad. Y'all ready?
So the month of March is generally what is known for the uprise in border crossings. The month of March, normally will see an increase in border crossing. That is the height, which you would normally see every year, right? So, however, you got things coming into play. First of all, you got Donald Trump in office. Second of all, you got him dying down on the border crossings by not allowing anyone to cross the southern border. Second of all, you got, well, I should say third of all, you got him going after the cartels. And for this reason, along with the cartels' influence with regards to making money off the crossings of the southern border, you have Donald Trump wanting to go in Mexico to go get the cartels. The cartels has been labeled as a terrorist organization. And because the cartels are labeled as an organization, Donald Trump wants to go into Mexico and get the cartels. And Mexico is being like, hold up, no, we can handle it. However, because of this, there has to be some type of understanding between the Mexican president, the Mexico president, and the cartels to leave the southern borders alone while Donald Trump is in office. Necessarily, you got to understand that the southern border is being used to, I want to say, invade, infiltrate the United States of America in hopes to gain some type of political influence in this country. And they're going to be talking about this today on this particular show. So, and this is coming out of the Heritage Foundation. I want to go over there to that and let you see what is popping off.
Center.
Good morning and welcome to our event today on weaponized immigration and U.S. citizenship with author Peter Schweitzer and Senator Eric Schmidt. Let me start with a quote from Peter Schweitzer's new book, The Invisible Coup, which will be the discussion of today's event. Quote, "Our debates about immigration revolve around what happens with immigrants once they arrive. We need to start talking about who is sending them and why. For decades, establishment elites sold us the story of immigration as a compassionate renewal of the American dream within a harmonious melting pot. But beneath that narrative lies a different reality. Mass migration has morphed into the most powerful political weapon ever aimed at the United States, one engineered by elites at home and aided by adversaries abroad," unquote. He goes on to write that other countries.
Can you believe that she said elites at home and enemies abroad? So when I think about, like, why is the Democratic Party just doing this stuff? Like, why are they so trying to allow other nations to have so much political influence in this nation? Why are they trying so hard? Like, it's not like you don't know the outcome of what is coming. And for surely, for one thing's for sure, like, you're trying to sell out America, but also, you know that if you do this, that in the long run, these particular individuals are going to take over to where, just like they doing inside of our communities, they going to overrun you and you not going to matter, basically, to the point to where they're going to turn on you as well. So I don't really get it.
Have been using immigration to the U.S. to destabilize our democratic republic. He starts with Cuba in 1980, the boat lift to the U.S. After President Jimmy Carter announced open arms to those on the boats coming from Cuba, Fidel Castro strategically sent violent criminals, psychopaths, drug dealers. He wasn't sending their best, as President Trump likes to say, to trouble the American homeland. Quote, "The beauty of migration as a weapon was that it twisted the reputation of America as a champion of human rights around the country's neck, and America would not see the noose until it was too late." Castro's designed exodus was what Peter Schweitzer calls the proof of concept. He goes on to write about Mexico, Venezuela, China, drug cartels, Islamists, all who exported nationals to the US, and American politicians who welcomed the numbers for political power.
Damn. All those nations are after the United States when it comes to political power. To gain the influence of political power, like the United States is trying, they want the United States to be holding to so many other countries when the United States is expected to be number one. But however, the political elite in this country, primarily stemming from the Democratic Party, is attempting to allow these individuals to gain that influence. And this has been going on since 1965. Like, we have got to go back and look at the money that is coming from what other nation or that is coming into the Democratic Party so we can get an understanding of how are we allowing these individuals to have access to this country to be even called elite.
We need to have eyes wide open about this mass migration phenomenon. This isn't the 1990s anymore. But the left and some on the right will.
So the 1990s is particularly when the cartels start to use the southern border as another operation to make money besides the smuggling of drugs and guns into this nation. Guns was basically kind of like reverse migration. However, the drugs and people, right, the human capital that comes from across the southern border from other nations, particularly began to be used as a way to influence the nation. This is back in the 1990s.
Repeat the old arguments they've used since at least the 90s, but they fall flat now to those who are awake. When you hear them repeated, scrutinize them, debate them, because they are the old excuses to continue this weaponization. Phrases like, "Americans won't do that job," but that job is an ever-growing list. Agriculture, construction, hospitality. We need more foreign nurses. We need more foreign doctors. Since when won't Americans do those jobs? We can't find Americans to fill these jobs. We need more immigrants because our birth rate is falling. The cost of lettuce is going to skyrocket. Immigrants add more to the economy than they cost. Immigration enforcement is racist and Islamophobic. And now, post-mass migration, the cliche, "but we're a nation of immigrants," takes on a whole new meaning, particularly as we also now face weaponized obstruction to deportations.
I don't understand how they can revolve around the subject of immigration when this has only started to occur for other nations that wasn't predominantly white. With the passage of Immigration Act of 1965. So how do you call this a nation of immigrants when you were not considered the immigrant before the Immigration Act of 1965? United States actually worked off a quota system. And with that quota system primarily came from European nations.
So today, our speakers will discuss how and why mass migration has happened, and what do we do about it? What does it mean to be a US citizen anymore? We have a lot of paper citizens. What do we do about them? So
Just imagine how Joe Biden had the nerve to say during his presidency, "I don't know what an American is. What is American?" Well, apparently there is a culture out here. Just because China has been around for 5,000 years and the United States has only been around for 250 years, doesn't mean that this nation doesn't have a culture, doesn't have some type of identity within itself to allow itself to have sovereignty away from other nations.
Starting us off will be Peter Schweitzer, president of Governmental Accountability Institute and author of several books, including Extortion, Clinton Cash, Profiles in Corruption, Blood Money, and his newest book, The Invisible Coup: How American Elites and Foreign Powers Use Immigration as a Weapon. Following Peter will be Mike Howell, visiting fellow to the Border Security and Immigration Center. He will be introducing Senator Schmitt and will be moderating the panel. So please join me in welcoming author Peter Schweitzer.
All right, everybody, get ready for the big play. Immigration is very different than it's been throughout American history. My parents were immigrants to the United States. I'm a first-generation American. But things are different, and I'm going to contend today that things are different in part because what foreign actors are doing, and they are weaponizing immigration and using it as a tool to undermine American sovereignty and to advance their domestic political interests inside the United States itself. So I'm going to do that not by positing my theories, but just quoting from some people who explain what their motivations are behind mass migration. And I want to begin with our neighbor to the south, Mexico. We all think we know why mass migration is taking place, but let me just read a couple of quotes from high-ranking Mexican officials that explain why they are excited about mass migration to the United States. The first one is from a Mexican senator, Felix Salgado. He's a member of the ruling Morena party, sits on the National Defense Committee, which is one of the most powerful committees in the Mexican Senate. He said this just a couple years ago, quote, "Mexicans are in our territory, California, Nevada, Texas, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Wyoming. We're going to take back the territory that was stolen from us." What? When I first ran across that, I thought that was really odd, and I thought that Senator Salgado just must be a nutcase.
He said this just a couple years ago. Like, the Chicano movement was started back in the 1970s, 1960s sometime, and it's like y'all just waking up to the whole idea with regards to we want our land back.
But I kept finding these quotes. This is from Gabriela Rodriguez. She's a senior aide to the current president, Sheinbaum of Mexico. This is from a December 2024 official report of the Mexican government. Quote, "We already know that the Mexican population in the United States reaches 39.9 million. We Mexicans are reclaiming our territory." When we think of mass migration from Mexico, we think about it in the context of the economic forces that are pulling people to come to the United States. When Mexico's elite thinks about it, they think about it as a means by which they can exert sovereignty in the United States itself. If that sounds kooky and crazy, they back it up. It's not just comments and statements they make. Literally, there are dozens of them that I could quote. It's actually the actions that they engage in that include this desire to exert political sovereignty in the United States. So what am I talking about? Well, one of the things I'm talking about is the fact that Mexico has right now a network of more than a dozen senior Mexican officials who live full-time inside the United States, but they actually serve in the Mexican Senate and in the Mexican Parliament. In other words, their job is to represent Mexicans living inside the United States before the Mexican government. That is certainly an erosion into our sovereignty. But to take it a step further, these same individuals are also involved in organizing violent protests and riots in the United States. In fact, one of them, Alejandro Robles, who serves in the Mexican Chamber of Deputies, lives outside of Los Angeles in Ontario, California. In 2025, he went across the United States to, quote, organize the militancy against Donald Trump, end quote. This is a foreign government official.
Now, look, this is what we got to understand, that all these nonprofit organizations that Donald Trump was talking about, how this stuff seems so organized. These protests just seem too organized. We need to get at these individuals who are starting up these protests. Not let alone that the Democratic Party, you got people like Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom. You got in Chicago people like whatever they is. I forget their names right now. However, you got these individuals from all across. Look at just what happened to Minnesota, right? So you got all these individuals who striking up, and it's coming from the Democratic Party that you don't seem to think. Look how differently, first of all, the Democratic Party looks in comparison to the Republican Party. Just look at its members. That tells you a lot. One of the things that I best believe is that for you to be a United States citizen, for you to absolutely run for political office, what you need to be third generation before you can ever have the opportunity to run for a political office. And this is the reason why, because you have individuals who seemingly, as a matter of these protests, you can believe and understand that these individuals want to fight for their parents. And there's nothing wrong with that. Second of all, 39 million of individuals from Mexico alone. 39 million individuals from Mexico alone who are trying to assert sovereignty that they can count. This is coming from the Mexico government that they can count, who are trying to assert sovereignty into the United States to have a political influence so that they feel that they can take this country back. So, isn't that a part of fraud, waste, and abuse under this new administration with regards to Trump and Donald Trump allowing the Vice President, J.D. Vance, to take on? Is that not fraud? That you came over here to this country to gain access to birthright citizenship, basically a paper citizen, right? Gain right to birthright citizenship so that you can gain sovereignty over here in this country. There has to be a means to withdraw back the citizenship from people who have came through this to the United States with regards to illegal means. And this shouldn't necessarily start from the 1990s on up, when the cartel pretty much started to make money from the southern crossing of the border, right? Because if we continue to allow the people to come over here who had the idea of coming over here with the means of infiltrating the United States, if we don't handle those people as well, then we're still going to be considered having a problem within this country, to where we still have other individuals who are loyal to their nation, right, more than they are to the United States, is a problem. This is why you see so many Mexican flags, so many Salvadorian flags, so many Guatemalan flags. You don't see black people doing this stuff. Black people are the only people who have fully assimilated into this nation. That's first of all. Second of all, it goes to show you the problem with this nation when it comes to white supremacy, right? And this is why seemingly Donald Trump has taken on white supremacy just as well as he has taken on these cartels, just as well as he has taken on black gangs, as black gangs, right? So when he go into Memphis, Tennessee, and he grabs up all the vice lords, besides just grabbing up all the illegal immigrants and the cartel members, he's grabbing up black people too. And this is something that people have gotten to understand, right? Because this is another mechanism for him to grab up people who are who have crossed the border illegally, but it's also got to do with the safety of that community, right? However, think about all the people who have crossed that southern border. how the United States doesn't have count of these individuals, but Mexico has count of these individuals. That is real shocking. So, with regards to waste, fraud, and abuse, does this not fall under fraud?
I could also look to the network of 53 consulates that Mexico has in the United States. They're doing the same thing. But the bottom line is that mass migration for our neighbor to the south has important political implications. And those political implications include exerting levels of sovereign political action inside our country itself. Now, let me just mention one other country that is engaging in similar sort of activities, but has a very different methodology, and that would be our chief rival on the global stage, which is the People's Republic of China. China is engaging in industrial scale exploitation of birthright citizenship in the United States. That is the notion, the idea, interpreted by some, that if you are physically inside the United States, it doesn't matter why you're here, if you are physically within the borders of the United States, you get automatic citizenship for the child. In China, the Chinese Communist Party has actually run articles in the People's Daily and other publications explaining to Chinese elites that this right exists, and in fact encouraging them to do so. And there is a massive birth tourism industry inside of China, more than 1,000 companies we've identified, that will make these arrangements for pregnant women in China.
See, and this is the reason why, while we've allowed the illegal immigrant to come over here, or the immigrant to come over here and be so opportunistic, catering to their opportunisticness, I guess you could say, they're opportunist. They're catering to their wanting to have opportunities. This may not necessarily seeming to want opportunities now. It's one thing to where the economy in Mexico was so bad that you had a Bracero program. It's another thing to where people begin to take advantage of your kindness, I guess you could say, and not understanding that they are supposed to be here for the benefit of the United States and not for the benefit necessarily of themselves. They're here for opportunities just to make money and go back home. Secondly, you got to recognize the problem that white supremacy has played on this nation. When you have the black individuals who wants the opportunities that necessarily given up to the immigrant, and here we are now that they are taking away your opportunities, white people. Here we are now, we want to fess up to that. This has become a problem. It sounds like kind of like the war on drugs, where you got one side who's so bloodthirsty to get rid of white supremacy that they are determined to ruin the country. Secondly, this immigration thing has been affecting black people for so long that, particularly since the late 80s, it's been affecting black people for so long that it's only starting to be recognized now about the problem with regards to, and it's because of Joe Biden. If Joe Biden would have kept President Donald Trump remain in Mexico program, none of this would have occurred. Soon as he got rid of Title 42, apparently you should see the rush towards the border. You got to remember the rush that was towards the border. You got to remember the fight that the military had with trying to keep that border closed, trying to stop from allowing people to come over. Why was there so many people attempting to come over? Besides the fact that we was just getting out of COVID-19. When we came, in 2021, it was 1.7 million people who was trying to cross that border. And it seems like when you look at some of these videos, it seems like forcefully. And it seems like nothing that the United States wanted to do, I'm talking about our leadership, wanted to do to fix the problem, and to, I want to say, kind of not even lackluster fix the problem. But to work through the problem, they decided to play a shell game and allow people to come over here to this nation legally by offering them opportunities to have immigrant parole, gave them work authorizations on top of that. See, no, I just try to say all these things to have you understand how the domestic fighting between white people and black people has seriously affected this nation now, to where you have members of our own country beginning to want these individuals to come over here so they can gain political power, denying the United States citizen the full access to a country in which they're coming from, in which they come from, just to allow other people to come and interrupt, I guess you would say, white power. See, this is a time for white people to understand that, hold up, we need to understand that black peoples are our brothers in this nation. Because if we don't wake up and do so, and we allow these other people to come in and have the opportunities that the civil rights that we were supposed to be giving to black people will be a lot more better off. We would not have created a communication gap between white people and black people. And we wouldn't be having a problem where right now we're trying to kick out, just from Mexico alone, 39 million. China is expected to be having birthright tourism, right, at somewhere between 50 and 60,000 people a year. And what do I mean by that? That means they come on over here into the United States. They have a child, right? Under the 14th Amendment, the way it has been practiced allows them to have a child here. And when that child is born, get that birth certificate, allow them to go back to Mexico, raise that child. Take that child back to China, raise that child up in China under Chinese customs, under Chinese value, and then that individual has the right to vote into the American system. We are not supposed to have dual citizenship. You are supposed to be sovereign to this nation. There is no actual such thing as a dual citizenship under the 14th Amendment. Your loyalty to this nation is strictly supposed to be for this nation alone. And this is where we are about to draw into when it comes to the court ruling from the Supreme Court with regards to the birthright citizenship or the 14th Amendment. How dual citizenship should not be in existence. First of all. Second of all, you had to renounce your citizenship from another nation. And then you have to be accepted into having citizenship into this nation by the United States, which means you had to apply for application. And then you could be a naturalized citizen. However, that doesn't grant you citizenship under the 14th Amendment, something that was meant for the children of slaves.
What they will do for a fee of about $80,000 to $100,000 is arrange for them to fly to the United States, get them through customs, arrange for the medical procedure. The child is born. Once the child is able to flies back to China, where it will be raised in the People's Republic of China under the auspices of the CCP. The problem is that child is now, according to this interpretation, a U.S. citizen. And even if they only spent a few days here at their point of birth, and even though they have been raised in communist China, when they turn 18, they're going to be able to vote in our elections, contribute to political campaigns, and donate to political campaigns and take government jobs. So this represents a massive security threat, especially when you look at the numbers, the massive scale in which this is taking place. Now, our federal government does not keep track of this data. There's no federal numbers on how many from China and other countries have done this. But the Chinese government has looked at this, and research firms have, and the numbers are eye-popping. Chinese government believes over the last 13 years, on average, roughly 50,000 children have been born in the United States every year. There are experts like Professor Salvatore Barbonis from Australia. He's an Australian professor who, by the way, is on very good terms with the Chinese. He believes it's closer to 100,000 a year. And then there are Chinese research firms, one that estimated in just a single year in 2018, this Chinese research firm believes that 180,000 babies were born in the United States or in U.S. territories like Saipan, where the same interpretation and rule applies. So bottom line is we are looking at between 750,000 and 1.5 million, based on these Chinese estimates, of quote-unquote U.S. citizens who are being raised inside the People's Republic of China that will have the right to vote when they turn 18. That is what we are facing. So the bottom line here is we need to stop thinking of immigration as this sort of organic act that occurs simply with the push and pull of economics, and realize that there are political implications behind what is taking place.
So what he means by without the push and pull of economics, that means, like I said, you know, immigration was always supposed to be for the economic benefit of the United States. The economic benefit of the United States is to fill a gap in the workforce. However, it becomes a play when you are able to use these individuals as a form of cheap labor, which knocks the United States citizen out of a job, not the United States citizen out of a sense of identity. What do I mean by that? Without a sense of having a title. Right? What is a title? A lawyer, a doctor, a police officer, a fireman, a construction worker, a plumber, an electrician, right? A barista, right? A server in a restaurant, somebody who does hospitality, or somebody who drives a truck. These are titles. So when you look at the culture that we are supposed to be having as United States citizens, we're being robbed of culture. We're being robbed of a sense of sovereignty. We're being robbed of a sense of not being able to have a unique aspect within ourselves that these immigrants who come from other nations are able to have within themselves, as they call themselves Mexican, as they call themselves Guatemalan, as they call themselves Jamaican, as they call themselves Belizean, as they call themselves Filipino, as they call themselves Puerto Rican, as they call themselves Chinese, as they call themselves Korean, as they call themselves Nigerian, as they call themselves Libyan, as they call themselves Ghanaian. American is losing that identity to be called American or a United States citizen, because so much immigration is coming in to where economically these individuals are taking the titles away from the United States citizen. Titles is what, like, you have the president of the United States. That is a title which says he is the leader of the world, that he is the most powerful person in the world. So these are the things that we have got to recognize, that what we're losing with all this immigration. That's why I say it's up to white people to identify within themselves that you are not better than a black person. You're not. It's up for black people to want to rise up to the occasion like you've always been doing. To want to rise up to the occasion and take full ownership of the land that you are from. That's what the 14th Amendment did. For those of you who do not recognize, so that means that I could continue on with the video, but I'm not, because it's whatever now. That means that you understand that you have lineage to this nation, and it's not necessarily to Africa. You not to say that you are greater than the people of Africa, right? But your history starts here because you don't know from where you come from in Africa. So you can't call yourself Ghanaian. You can't call yourself Libyan. You can't call yourself Egyptian. You can't call yourself South African. Because I guarantee you, if you were to do a DNA test, it's going to show you coming from all these other places in Africa to where you cannot target specifically where you come from, even through DNA. In fact, they have to go through records in the United States to say that, okay, you're a foundational Black American. We have a list that your forebearers were slaves. But that's not to say that for white people to look down on you. That's for white people to appreciate you as brothers. White people need to wake up. You guys are starting to wake up. Stop all the domestic fighting. As your jobs are being replaced, white people, or as you're losing out on opportunities that Black people has been missing out on, and you've been giving our civil rights to other people. As you're starting to realize this, it's just time for you to wake up. You know what I'm saying? It's time for you to stop all the rhetoric and realize that, okay, Black people are not the second class anymore. Black people are along with us, the immigrant who is supposed to be the second class. And that's because they are not supposed to have the same rights that United States citizens have. And that's with regards to the why it is such appreciated that individuals are trying to bring in the Save America Act or the Save American Voting, whatever, the SAVE Act. This what distinguishes us as United States citizens. The fact that we allow people to come over here and immigrate to this country so that they can have the opportunities in which we built a foundation for them. Right or wrong? If I'm wrong, hey. Tiny Cross-H.U.G on the Trumped Up Live Show, man. Always remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It's a good day to be a soldier.